Once upon a time, two boys grew up playing hockey in the village of Terrace, British Columbia. One of them went on to play in the National Hockey League. The other became a comedian. Now, one flies planes and coaches youth hockey. The other is still a comedian and owns newsstands. This is their podcast, Enjoying Orange Slices with Jeff and Ian.
Hello, Jeff. It's Enjoying Orange Slices with Jeff and Ian. My name's Ian. We got a big show for you today. We got Dean Morton. You played with him in Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
And after he left Detroit, he traveled around, did some minor league stuff, and then became a referee linesman and ended up in the NHL. And we're about to talk to him. It's brought to you by Superdeker, superdeker.com. Go there, learn how to stick handle. Next thing you know, you're not a referee. You're in the league forever. Superdeker.com. Use that slices. Get yourself a little bit of discount. Let's go to the interview now. Today's guest, drafted by the Detroit Red Wings, purchased by Player and Safety. Please welcome Dean Morton. Hi, Dean. How are you?
Great, guys. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, just fantastic. Both of us are nervous. We haven't had a referee before, so we just want to make sure that we keep it onside.
Well, am I allowed to swear?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Well, both of you go fuck yourselves. So it's all good.
Already my favorite referee.
Yeah, and Mort was worried about before he came on. It's like, I don't know, Sharps. I'm like, oh, you'll be fine, Morty. And right off to a great start. So, hey, Morty, you and I crossed paths back when you were a player, and you played in the OHL and grew up around, I believe, the Peterborough area. And then you got drafted by the Wings, played some hockey there. And then you made a huge change, right? So in your career, but stayed in the game. Maybe talk a little bit about your minor hockey, come up through junior, and then your pro, and then what kind of led you to the decision that ultimately drove a wonderful career for you, still in the game for 20.
I like Jeff's question. Can you tell us about your whole life?
Yeah.
I'm doing your job for you guys.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know what, you can scratch the minor hockey part of it, because I'm sure you were the best player in the league.
No, I'll tell you this right now. That's probably the highlight of my entire life, is growing up in the town of Peterborough and playing for that minor hockey 1968 age birth. We're a small town, and our team had some significant players on the team. We've had a great deal of success through minor hockey, and when you're a kid, that's all you want. You want to just be able to achieve the best at the end of every season. And we were fortunate enough to have even the age group ahead of us, and Sharps, you might know, like Steve Chason. He was my best friend, and he was always 1 year older than me. And both groups of the 67 birth and 68 births were successful, highly touted teams. And in Peterborough, sport is sport. There's a lot of small towns. That's all you do. You go play box ball. You play everything competitive. And my 68 birthday team, we managed to really achieve a lot for the town of Peterborough and for ourselves. And great friendships. Unfortunately, I was at a funeral for one of our great old teammates, and his mother had passed away, and we were shooting the shit there just on Saturday, talking about just being 13-year-old, 14-year-old, 15-year-old kids with the dream to play in the OHL. And we managed to do the highest levels that we could at that time. And we still bond to this day. Some guys that went on to further success, whether it's a NCAA or pro hockey. And to this day, some guys are still involved in hockey, whether it's coaching or not. And we were fortunate enough, that team, which I still consider for the town of Peterborough, to consider it for a Hall of Fame type of hockey team, because we won the Ontario Championships for the highest levels. When you're trying to go to the OHL, you want to be at the pinnacle of each season, and we did that twice. And it bled through some success. We had 6 guys go to the OHL. I think it was 6, anyways. My numbers are a little bit off sometimes, but
typical ref.
Yeah, but it just, our guys, that group of guys growing up together, that's the longest group of guys I've ever had time to spend in my entire career. because things change as you get to pro, even as a referee, it changes year to year. But those good guys, we all grew together, and everybody's gone on to successful careers in their life.
Who were you drafted by in the OHL? At that time, it was you got a letter from, right?
Yeah, we got 2 letters. Well, I was fortunate enough because they identified me as an underage draft pick potential. And I got the letter from Dave Branch, who was the commissioner of the OHL at the time, and commissioner of the CHL. And he said that you're potentially could be a top 3, third, or not top 3, God, a top 3 round pick in the first year as an underage. And I was considered through with the Ottawa Sevens. It didn't come through that year, so I went back, and that's the year we went on to play and won the Ontario Championships that year. But it was the previous year that the 67s picked me in the 3rd round then, and I went on to play for them for all of 2 months and a bit, and I got traded to the Oshawa Generals. I don't know if you guys are familiar because you're Westerners, but Oshawa Peterborough had probably the longest rivalry history in CHL, and it was the greatest time of my life. But when you're a Peterborough kid playing for the Oshawa Generals, it was blasphemy.
Right.
There was venom, there was brawls, there was fan brawls, there was fights on the GM factory lines, because it was across everybody from Peterborough worked together. It was a fun time looking back. I mean, when you're 18 years old, 17, 18, 19 years old, you don't think of the ramifications of how these people are, how passionate they are.
Yeah.
And it was a Thursday night Peterborough, Sunday night Oshawa, and usually a few penalty minutes were had at both sides, and it kind of accrued to my career, penalty minutes playing the Petes.
For those people who don't know, Oshawa and Peterborough are not far away. They're only like an hour and a half away from each other, right?
45 minutes.
45 minutes. So you're getting crossover in both those stands. So yeah, that's why that's so passionate, because you only have to drive 45 minutes to beat up a stranger.
Well, you know what? It's familiarity actually breeds a lot of hate.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we're both competitive cities. And I mean, I grew up hating the Oshawa, minor hockey teams, because kick the shit out of each other all the time. Kingston was the same in the Eastern Ontario. We had, Belleville. Every time you played, but you played each other all the time, so you got to know the players that were out there. And when you grow up and you go on and go on and go on, it gets filtered out, but you still see the same guys and you still talk about the same stuff. How much you just hate each other, the game you were playing. But after the games are done, or after our careers are done, you still talk about the great times of battling, because battle is what hockey's about.
Morty, you bring up a excellent, some great points. But one of the things, and we've talked about, is the Western League, the Western Hockey League, the OHL, Ontario League, and Quebec League. But one of the things that the Ontario League has, obviously, you have these built-in rivalries that go back years and years and years. But you also, like you said, these communities are so close together. So there's a lot of contempt, a lot of competitiveness over the years. But, you weren't, like, when you left home, you weren't that far away from home. So you're able to play a high level of hockey and still keep in touch with your family, I'm assuming, and people that were close to you. Would that be the case?
Come on, Jeff. He was playing in Oshawa. He's from Peterborough. His parents didn't want to see him until the end of the year. You go live with somebody else. You go live with somebody else.
Well, it would have been tough for some of your friends, but I mean, there are some benefits to being that close, even though you probably didn't really enjoy them too much during the hockey season.
Oh shit, Jeff. The best part of being that close to Peterborough and playing, especially Sunday nights, is when my mom and dad would come watch the game on Sunday night, and then Dad would give me a hug, and there'd be a $20 bill in my hand just to make sure I was covering the rent there that week, and taking the boys out for pizza and whatever beverages that were offered for underage kids at that time.
That's nice. It's great. Probably your parents are probably wearing Peterborough jerseys and stuff too. They're all just Peterborough stuff.
Being a Peterborough kid, whether it's lacrosse, softball, baseball, whatever we played, there was always it's just Oshawa. Just anything with O in it, you just didn't like it. And we just competed, and there was just
even eat Cheerios.
was a healthy hate. I mean, it was a great way growing up because you knew competitive. There wasn't a purple ribbon at the end saying, thanks, here's no score. We were battling for that one game, and you wanted to see, my penalties were up every game I played in Peterborough. And I mean, you know what, I received a lot more than I gave, but I gave enough to make sure that they knew I was there. So I guess that's the benefit of being that. But that being said, I mean, I grew up with a family that, was very competitive, and whether it be lacrosse or other, and they taught me the ways of number one, being the best and toughest you can. I was not the most talented. I mean, I had a certain skill set, and that was it. But I grew up knowing that, listen, everybody needs their ditch diggers, everybody needs their third line center, and everybody needs that fourth pairing defenseman that can mash out and lock down. And that's how I grew up. It didn't matter what you contributed to the team, and throughout my career, because of Peterborough and how I grew up, I had a great deal of successes, whether it be lacrosse or field lacrosse or even just in hockey. And it was just competitive. It just made, when you're an 18-year-old kid and you're looking back and you think that's the end of the world because you don't think there's anything after that. My teens, the best time of my life, because it was always just, you're on edge. You just went.
Hey, Morty, I'm curious to the feeling you had the day you found out you're going to play for the Oshawa Generals. Growing up, despising that town for years, and now you're going to play for their junior team. How did you feel when that realization hit you initially? Because it sounds like you really enjoyed playing there.
Well, and Sharps, you played junior hockey. I got embedded in a great family in Ottawa, and I was there all of 2 months. They had 2 teenage girls there, and we bonded. The family took me in right away. And if it was 3 years of my career to stay there, it would have been the best 3 years of my life. But the day I got the Thursday, I got the call that I was getting traded. Everything's in shock, no matter where you're going. But then the drive from Ottawa to Oshawa, say it's 3:45, and I had to make a little cut back there to go see Mama Bear and give my mom a big hug. And she made me a dinner, because I had to get on the bus for Friday to go play a game of golf against my buddy Chase, Kerry Huffman, and Brian Hayton, and those guys were all Peterborough kids, and it was just, it didn't come to reality until after probably that game and that weekend, because you're bagged, you're traveling. I think I was speeding down the friggin', Highway 7 just to get to make sure, because you didn't know any better. You had to be there. You had to be on the bus, and probably wasn't the safest thing I did back in the day. I sped, got to the game, and I probably should have stayed away because we got the living shit kicked out of us in golf. And my buddy Chase is like, how the hell are you doing it right now? But it came through the 2.5 years I was in junior, playing for the Generals. And every time I go to Peterborough, there'd be signs up there, because I had another friend of mine, a buddy of mine from Peterborough that played for the Generals too, Scott Mahoney, a tough son of a bitch. And I think we did Peterborough proud, because we didn't back down, and we fought, we hit, we just did everything. And that trade brought the best out of me, sorry. Because just that rivalry helped make me what I was, and the hate made me a better hockey player, because I just wanted to go knock the shit out of anybody I could on the ice.
It's funny you say that. It made you a better player, because I was going to ask, do you think, after going through that, do you think there should be trades in that age group? Because I think it's a little young to be playing with for a kid at 15, 16 years old to be traded. But you say it kind of shaped you. So it sounds like it's a double-edged sword, where it's a real hard thing on a kid, but at the same time, a good thing on a kid.
Ian, everything's adversity. You're brought upon, it's how you react to it.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't disappointed. Someone traded for me, but the other side is the 67s at that time got a world-class world junior hockey player that was disgruntled in Oshawa.
Mm-hmm.
So his disgruntledness gave me an opportunity to go play as a six pairing defenseman.
Who was that?
It was Dan Grattan.
Mm.
Nick Pratt was a first round pick with Craig Duncan to the LA Kings, and he was kind of the be all in the OHL at that time. And I got traded for Dan Grad. Here's a first year junior hockey player with maybe 15 games under his belt, and got traded. And there's a couple other parts and players, but we got traded off, and Sherry Basson took the trust in me to come and bring a very tough level hockey for the level of for the division we played in. All of the interior hockey was tough. My forte was open ice hits and good defensive style play, and it created chaos and it created mayhem, because yourself, anytime there's a great hockey hit, it creates momentum for your team, because then it just builds. And that was that's what I brought, and it created mayhem. I mean, I don't know if Sharps and I played together in preseason, but when it got to the pro levels and I got to doing some exhibition games with the Red Wings, I had some pretty damn good open ice hits. Like, I'm going to say Scott Stevens hits, like open ice, clean. I didn't elevate. I just knocked the shit out of some guys, and it created basically what happened and developed into me being able to play in one National Hockey League game. And those were the best times of my life. And that's just how it kind of festered itself. And some guys can score goals. Some guys may be lockdown centers, but mine was more, there was more media to it, because it created mayhem. The fans liked that shit. And that got me one game.
Nice. So you get the one game, and now you go back to the minors. How long after that do you switch completely and go into refereeing?
Well, it took me a bit. I mean, when you're 21 years old, you played in the NHL, and Detroit wasn't very good at the time.
Take that, Jeff.
Yeah, that was the last year they didn't make the playoffs prior to that big long run they had. And they had a veteran-laden team. There was disgruntledness in that room. Jacques Demers was coaching at the time. Jimmy D was the big GM, and there was so much shit going on. I mean, I was there at the beginning of the season, and I created that opportunity for myself, just with aggressive style. And the fans did like what I did. The media did like what I did. Could I have sustained it? Possibly, but it wasn't going to fester into a longer career. I got sent down, and I'm like, okay, I was told that you're a young kid. The team is in disarray, because it was one of that transition teams. It's like, they're going to have to make changes. They're going to go on a rebuild. And at this point, they didn't want me around that until they got rid of the cancers that were in the locker room at the time. And Jeff was a part of that stuff, not the cancer, but he was a part of the young guy that had to deal with the veteran style at that point. 1989, it was, the veteran guys, there wasn't many 21-year-olds in the league at that point. There's a few guys, and Sharps got a chance there as a young player coming out of the dub, and he made a name for himself offensively and got into the, major games. A guy like me, a grinder, I shouldn't have seen the NHL until I was 23, 24, because you have to build yourself as a defenseman at that level for the style of play I had. So it kind of developed itself into that level, but just it was the circumstance that Detroit was in at that time that precipitated where and how me going to the minors, and then hopefully thinking, oh, I'll get back, but never did.
It's funny you say that, Morty, because now I watch these games, and the way they handle young players, at least as far as making mistakes on the ice, if they're in an NHL game, they usually get another chance out there. Back then, that was a little different time, and it was definitely more veteran. The coaches leaned on the vets. I mean, they still do today. But Marty brings up a good point. The opportunity for the younger players I watch is in Vegas. I go to a lot of games, and those young guys, they get out there, they make their mistakes, they're right back out there again. And I think that's something that's kind of changed over time. Detroit started, it started, they're kind of on their way back. We're drafting Stevie Yzerman, and then they made some other really good drafts. Morty talks about Chase. Steve Chason was a big part of it. Dougie Huda was in there, and then another younger guy, Rick Zombo. And then the Russians came over, and that kind of helped propel Detroit, forward and towards their cups. And of course, they signed some great veterans. But I want to ask you about that, Morty. Like, I mean, you got a front row seat once you change gears, but before I get there, I want to ask, when in the minors and or in the summer did you sit there and go, I got to do something else? And that something else turned out to be roughing, because I know there's a few guys, like I played with you and Wes McCauley, who was here in Vegas with us, but and you might start to see some more guys headed that way. But how did that decision come about? Like, where were you when you were like, maybe I should look into this? Did someone mention it to you? Was there a mentor? How did that all happen?
I'm gonna interrupt you. Was it like this, where one day you were driving home, a traffic light was out, you got out, directed traffic, and you said, "I should be a referee. I'm really good at this."
Oh shit! Again, that's not really what worked that way, but 21 years old, I was in the NHL. 22, I wasn't. 23, I wasn't, and it came to the point where I was doing a bit of a suitcase action. Then I was going from the Colonial League to the East Coast League, and I was in the IHL, and I go back to the American League, and my father passed away in October of 1992, and I was on a tentative contract, I guess, with Cincinnati Cyclones of the IHL. Of course, then obviously you're going home. Your father's passed away, and you're going. I came back 2 weeks later, and things changed in pro hockey. Lou Lamoriello signed the New Jersey Devils to make an agreement to send players to there. Well, the job wasn't there, so next thing you know, I'm shuffling around, going, "Where am I going next?" I'm the odd man out. So I got back from my dad's funeral and grieving, and it came to the point where it's like, I'm fucking done chasing this dream now. I mean, I went from the highest level of anything you could achieve in hockey, and went through the worst time of my life. And then I get back, and now I'm jobless, and I was ready to just basically, I wasn't, I'm not a quitter, but there was nothing else for me to kind of go to, and then I got an opportunity just to play the Colonial Hockey League at the end of my career, which is in 92, 93, and Don Robertson gave me a chance to go there and play, and it was probably the most fun I've had in hockey, with no pressure, knowing that there was a finish line, and we went on, won the championship. I played, some fun hockey, played with a bunch of guys that I had played way back in junior, and that was the realization. But the point was, a guy like myself, I never berated the officials. I challenged them with, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. And I would go down before the games and talk to the referees, because they were the guys that were refereeing me in junior. And one of the main guys came up to me, and his name was Bob Norley, one night, and he says, "Well, why don't you go to this referee clinic in the summer?" And I said, "Refereeing clinic? Jesus Christ, are you drinking before the game here, Bob?" And he gave me the name of the school, and I knew that I had my wife's family had a business that I was able to transition after I knew that this was my last year. And I went to this officiating camp, and I think it was in June. And Will Norris, who was an NHL, major NHL linesman back in the day, and Ken Bodendistel was head of the OHL officials. And both those guys identified me as a guy that had skill. I had no head for officiating, but they took it upon themselves to say, "Listen, we want you to pursue this." And they put me into the OHL right away, and know where to stand on the ice at that point in June. Ivan Locke was a gentleman that basically took me and schooled me in the summer to give me the basic XYZ, the black and white stuff through the summer. But that's how it kind of developed, and there was no aspirations to go. I didn't even know that what I ended up achieving in my career was ever possible, because I just was going out because I wanted adrenaline. I wanted to be part of the game. And
sorry, Morty, did you say that from that camp that through the summer they got you ready and you went right into the OHL that fall as a referee at 24 years old?
No, I started as a line.
Okay, started, but you were still okay. You were still
went to the OHL.
Yeah, like you went from playing pro hockey one season to being a linesman in the Ontario Hockey League the next fall.
Yes, and that was my department. So I had done that. I did the OHL and the Ontario Hockey Association, which is the Tier 2 juniors and stuff. And I learned fast, because the big thing that I think that the OHL looked at is he's going to make mistakes. Just see how many times he makes the same mistake. And I was lucky enough to actually learn from those. And it developed. And I became a very good linesman at that point. And a good buddy of mine in Oshawa at the time, we kind of grew up together. And he's going to be a Hall of Famer in Oshawa soon. Is Derek Amell. He's done 7 Stanley Cups as a linesman and everything. We grew together, and he got hired, and I didn't. There was a point in 1998 where I guess you could say I was pissed off because I was told I was going to be hired to the NHL as a linesman, and some Jerry Basson again said we need more players, and you have a hockey sense, and you've already had 5 years in the league. Why don't you start being a referee? And so I started, and they said, we're going to give you a 3-4 month trial, and then if not, you go back to the OHL or go back to the lines, and you'll do your Memorial Cup then. And it just kept going and going and going, and things were going well. The coaches responded. I did a pretty good job, but I also had a good base of 5 years as a lines because the coaches knew me on the lines, and I also had an understanding of how the game was then. And that being an ex-player, I understood the game and flow of hockey. So that really helped me develop into being a referee, and then 2 years of refereeing in the OHL at that point. I was noticed by Dave Newell one night at the OHL Championships, and I got hired to the NHL on a trainee basis in '99, and then it just kind of started snowballing. And then 2000, I got hired full time to be what we classify full time as minor league NHL official at that point.
Hey, Morty, was it kind of weird going back to the OHL because a lot of those coaches, or some of them, would have still been coaching in the league, I'm guessing. So you came through as a player, they would have known you. Then you were a linesman. Then you were a ref. So and the hockey community is pretty small. So you must have known those. I mean, was it weird, like making that transition from player to linesman to referee, and the same guys are kind of yelling at you, or at least, coaching these teams?
Well, it's the hockey is that kind of a world, right? I mean, there's a piece of no one likes the referees. No one likes this, but it's a necessary evil. And when I got out in the ice, there was familiarity. So the coach could look at you and I know this guy. So I like to think they thought I was an honest hockey player, and I like to think they thought I was an honest linesman at that time. And that helped because it helped with communication. If a referee was having a bad night, they knew that I could actually get my ear and I would pass the message on. And I'm not saying I'm going to tell a guy how to officiate a game, but it kind of softened the blow a bit because there was familiarity. They're not looking at XYZ over there and he's coming on the ice and they have no idea who this guy is. They could relate, and I was able to communicate with them at that point on the level that they are, which, communication is different in 1995 than it is to 2005 to 15, because, you talked a lot more because you talked hockey. You did the fuck yous and all that stuff, but it was never personal again.
They never go tell that ref that he's a fucking disgrace, and then hey, Peterborough says you're a fucking disgrace.
Well, you know what though, I did it a couple times with some veteran coaches, and I said, well, I can go tell him, but you don't have enough balls to tell him that. So do you want me to go tell him? Because you're going to be in the box. If I tell him, I tell him. So, and then that kind of broke the ice a bit too, right? So I wasn't a messenger boy, but the end game was they knew that there was a message that could be parlayed, and it softened their blow a bit because it became a trust. And once trust comes about, then the coaches they can rely on, or they can just focus on their 20 players and not have to worry about what the officials are going to try and do. Listen, I watch games today. I watch games when I watch my own goddamn games, and I'm sitting there sometimes shaking my head. But the end game is these guys are doing what they can see. And Sharps, you're 4 levels up from the glass in Vegas, and I've given you the old peace sign every time I'm on the ice, and and whenever I've seen you. But you watch the game at that level, and you're sitting still, checking it out, moving your head. Well, I think you said it to me the first time we actually had a chat in the locker room. Like, holy fuck, you guys move a lot. You guys got to do this. You do that. How you move this, and how do you do this? I said, well, a lot of it's luck, a lot of it's understanding the game, but it's just the game is so erratic that things are going to get missed.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny.
You don't want to miss a scoring opportunity. You don't want to see anybody get hurt. You want to protect the players. That's it. Not the goalies. So,
well, and you know what? I think we were talking to someone else at one point about refereeing. No one goes to the rink, as a referee and wants to decide that game that night. Like you guys are just going to work it and give an honest effort. And it is the human factors and stuff does get missed. And, sometimes there's an embellishment by a player that, a ref, might let go or might call. It's hard to say, but it's funny, Morty, you brought up Vegas because, so every time Mort came to town, and I just kind of leads me into my next part. Our question is, Morty is knocking on the glass one night, and I'm sitting with good friends Randy and Susan, and we're sitting down there with Michelle, and I knocking on the glass, and I'm not paying attention to Morty. He's down there giving me the hey, like I'm trying to wave to you. Well, everyone around is going, "What's this ref doing? What's he doing? Like, what is up with this guy?" Like, it totally freaked out. And I'm kind of looking around to see who he's looking at, and Morty's pointing at me, right? So I wave back to Morty, and but that's one of the things that I think it was like,
what's going on is they're so used to like kids sports, they think you're being tossed out of the rink. They're like, enough of you, get out of
here. I think that kind of leads, with Morty and Wes, who I know you've done a bunch of games with, but you guys have the experience playing the game, but you guys are also characters, and you bring a little bit of yourself into the way you officiate, whether it's a penalty on the mic once in a while, or just kind of having fun with your job. But maybe did they ever talk, like when you kind of did your thing, Morty, does the NHL, they kind of give the refs some leeway to be who they are, or do they kind of want more of a cookie cutter, like, not robotic, but do they want to keep it, you guys, between the lines? Or is there some thought with the entertainment and everything else? You guys are part of the game. Is there some thought that now they let the refs kind of and the linesmen kind of be more, themselves? Like, how's that interaction?
Well, you know what? It's a fine line. In 22 years, at year 8, I may not have done that, knock the glass and look at you and point and all that. At year 15, I might have been a little bit more subdued doing it. But at year 15, 16, 17, I was able to you got to channel yourself. If you're if you're year 8, that's looking at not focusing. At year 15, that's looking like the guy's got control. And the NHL doesn't say, "Oh, don't go out there," because they don't want us to be robots. They want you to have a personality, but you have to do with what's in your own comfort zone to stay within the zone of that game, because it's a 60-minute, 65-minute battle during the regular season, and you got to focus. I'm not doing that in the playoffs. I'm not doing that at the end of the season when games are on the line, because number one, social media is going to kick the shit out of you, going, "Oh, look at the referee over there. He's waving at some broad in the stands over there." Well, you're not my type there, Sharps, but it's
I got a job, so I got that, but
but no, it becomes, there has to be a personality, because I don't want to see like we lost our names years ago before I even got involved, and that part didn't matter to me. I took pride in the fact that I wore 36. But the fact of the matter is that I can go and I would always kind of identify a kid. A kid wanted to put his fist up the glass. Here, right? Can you find the hammer? And you do that, and the kids are like, "Oh my God, the referee did that," or something. And it was just, you got to be human too.
It gives it a human element, right? Exactly.
Yeah, players have to do that too. But some players don't know how to all of a sudden define it, because 15 years ago I could go do it with the veteran guys after they already told me to fuck off for 5 years. But at the end, that's where you get the rapport, you build it. Well, the new age now is the league is now a 22-year-old league, and these kids are so focused on or isolated to the fact that, like, their interaction with the community is great, but is it themselves? Is it their personality? That's sometimes is where it gets lost, and that's kind of what I was doing, or Wes might do it, or anybody. If they do something outside of the realm, like, we're very giving people, officials, even though we take it every night, because the home team, no one wants to get stopped for a ticket, even though you broke the law. So you're going to get in shit for it. It's never your fault. And we just go out there and try to make sure that the right people get identified. And it's a lot of times it's the young kids. You throw a puck over the glass, and it's just, "Oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever," because the kid's going to remember that puck forever. So that's kind of the things I did. Wes does a lot of different things too, but it's personalities that you develop as you get longer in your career.
As a linesman and a referee, do you do 80 games, 80 regular games a year, or how does it work?
No, we referees do 73, linesmen do 74. And for that reason, it's because our travel is crazy. We could technically do 5 games a week, and we could do 5 games in 5 different cities. We never have a home game, so
Right.
you know, the players are doing 41 games at home. We're on the road, 26 days a month, not consecutive, but by the time I go home, I'm turning around and get back on the road. I go home to get new underwear and just check off, and then so it's the job is not for everybody. I loved every aspect of it because my job was, I went to the airports and I'd talk to people and I remembered people because I'm going to see the same people the next week or tomorrow morning when I got to get on that plane, and I might be 5 minutes late or my bags are missing or something. And you build rapport. These people are going to help you out if you're a nice guy. And but the other side is they need that little leg up because they're dealing with people that don't travel and they're frustrated and they're stressed and everything else. So my job is I know how to travel. I might as well just make this person's day the best day they could have in that 5-minute interaction we have.
Right. Lilies. And now out of those 74, 73 games, are they all in the same like conference, or is it right through the league?
No, you're covering basically, for the most part, you're almost going to cover all 32 cities now. So you'd hit a loop. So if I went to Vegas, I'm going to Arizona, LA, or LA, Anaheim, San Jose. I'm going to do that little the West Coast swing, and then I'll fly home. And then I'll go to New York and I'll bang the New York, Boston, Washington loop. Florida's kind of the same loop. You go Florida, maybe you get to Carolina on the way, or you go over to Dallas. So travel wise, that kind of helps, but the travel still, you're getting up at
doesn't matter.
Yeah, you're getting up at 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning to catch that flight because our job is to be in the city. Well, we have to be in the city. If you're doing back to back, like we do 3 and 3 nights and we're in 3 different cities, you got to be in that city by 11:30 the day of that game. And with 5 years ago, they cut flights. They did this. COVID cut that. You're up at that first flight because you have to have backup to get to the city. So the travel was probably the easiest part to leave because it's just, don't forget, you're not getting back from the rink till midnight. You're eating chicken wings because everything in the States closes at 10 o'clock. And the teams started feeding us better. It could always be a little better. But still not going to bed till 1 and you're up at 4 and you go there. So you're sleeping you're basically getting 3-4 hours sleep increments because you have that great afternoon nap. That's the best part of hockey.
Right.
Hey, Morty, you called it a loop. So just for people out there, how many games would you do? You say, let's just say you're on the road for 10 days. I think you said earlier. In that loop, how many games are you doing? 5, 6 games, 7 games? Like
Probably seven.
7 games in 10 days and basically a day off. And then you could have 3 and 3. And the players never play 3 and 3, right? Everyone makes a big deal out of it when the players play back to back and they're chartering everywhere. You guys are doing 3 and 3, just like we did in junior hockey and in minor pro. They do 3 and 3. So, and the stress of the travel, and that's something people might not think about. That's a huge part of it, especially with COVID and flights being canceled. And now you got to find a way to get into a city, maybe another way. I mean, did you ever have to like rent a car and drive, or would you guys do that? How, like,
yeah, like, I mean, listen, travel is the worst part of the job. If things are smooth, yeah, go ahead. It took me a lot of years to get status, and status helps with being able to get a great seat. But a lot of times, I'd say 60% of the times you're on the back of the bus and you're jammed together with a group of people that, you can't move, you can't, whatever, they smell like shit or whatever it is, you know what I mean? Or they're slamming back booze and you got shit spilled all over you. People and down in the States, they don't recognize who you are, especially as an official. Sometimes in the States they would know you, but I was lucky enough to be up front quite a bit because I live in Canada and I had status with the airlines up here. That really helps because then again you fly the same line you're running into a lot of the same people too, and that familiarity just makes your job easier for a lot of things. And but getting down to the point of delays or travels, getting a car, yeah, you had to do that. Our job is to be at the rink that night. Sometimes you show up an hour before the game. No rest, no sleep. You had 3 hours sleep the night before. You've hit snowstorms. You got to one city, but you had to get a rent a car and go. And I mean, I did that in Dallas a couple of times where I had to fly to Houston because I couldn't get into Dallas. It was just the ice storms, and that's not the greatest of drives, especially in Texas when the ice is on the road. But and that's just one example. Yeah, I love going out west because there's nothing better than taking that drive from Phoenix to Vegas. And I mean, I just look at it looked like a cartoon movie every time I grew up because you got cactuses and dust balls all over the place.
How tight were you with your travel person? You must have been buying them a nice gift every year.
Well, they're restricted though, so we had to beg, borrow, and steal as much as we could. And our travel people, they were unbelievable. They knew my tendencies. They knew that if I was flying out, if I had a day off, don't put me on until 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock flight, making sure I had the backup. I didn't need to get into the city at 9 the next morning with a day off.
Right.
I mean, even if it's a great city or not, you're still going to have that sleep, or you're going to do whatever. So, but the travel people understood you after a long period of time. And, you know, we had carte blanche a lot of times with how we would travel. There was restrictions within it, but when you had your free time, you could, if I wanted to say, get to LA by 6 in the morning and be able to enjoy a golf game at the, you know, the hotel club we had or something, I would go. That was me. That was on me. But I wanted my mental health. But no, for the most part, it's you get to where you need to, and the travel people understood a lot of your tendencies of how you wanted to travel.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Hey, Morty. So is there any rinks I mean, you know, LA's great, Vegas, Nashville. I mean, these are great cities. But then you've got the original six, which are great cities: Chicago, Montreal, Toronto, New York, and Boston's awesome too. But any cities you really enjoyed working more than others, and/or any loops, I guess, for like where you were looking at some games going, you know, I'm really looking forward to doing that? Or does it all kind of blend together a little bit after a while?
I always try to take a little piece out of every city I went to. So first and foremost, I think probably the best city that I ever got a chance to go to and enjoy was always New York City, Madison Square Garden. Not the city itself. I love the city, don't get me wrong, but Madison Square Garden it's MSG, man. And even though they did the renovation, it was still MSG.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of these new rinks are cookie cutter type things, and the environment and aspects are good. Like you go to Montreal, I love going into the city and going getting a smoked meat sandwich at Dunn's, and it's just there's a buzz. You get a feel. It's almost like a goosebump moment. You go to Vegas, and even though Vegas has got so many other things on the way, you walk to the rink from the hotel and you're carrying your bag. No one knows who the hell you are, but you're going and you got Knights jerseys all over the goddamn place, and people are excited about it. There's an energy. I just love going to the rinks that have energy. And I mean, I always loved going to Dallas because Dallas had just the fan base there was great. Everybody's all dressed up. They got the cowboy hats on. They got this, you know, I mean, it's just all, there's different elements in every city I got a chance to go to. You know, I always took a shine to try and go on the Vegas ice early because they always had a theater going on before. There was a guy with the sword and sick in the ice and whatever, but the fans ate it up. And then they just, when they're salivating to watch the hockey game at that point, you get to some centers where it's so vanilla that it's unfortunate because they need to put a better show on. I mean, I used to be the point of no rink boards and just watch the hockey game, but when the fans need to be entertained and they get excited prior to the game, that's, I think, hockey's going to venture itself toward.
Yeah. You ever see that kid in Dallas with the Joe Dirt mullet?
Yeah.
It's my favorite.
Oh no, not the kid that got the shit kicked out of him. No,
not that kid. That kid with that really long gold, like yellow one. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, the one that got, yeah.
No, there was another guy that got, but there's this kid that sings. He rocks.
Yeah, there's a guy behind the net that always did something too. But yeah, there's a character. There's a guy in used to be at the old Long Island Coliseum, and he always had the whatever you call it, the sparkly hair shit on and everything else. Just a guy, just a blue collar guy. And
Yeah.
you just, I give him a fist pump, and then he was just like they're hard nosed fans, but they understood it too. So, I mean, I love the old Coliseum in Long Island. You know, those are rinks where you want to work because there's nowhere to hide in those spots, man.
Mm-hmm. I know my question has got to be, have you had the talk with any players that like they had it, so the refs had to talk with you? Hey, you should do this.
Are you talking tendencies?
No, I'm talking like you should think about becoming a referee, a linesman. You should go take a course and you know, have you ever talked to anybody about that?
I never had that opportunity yet.
You should talk. You should talk.
You're not going to some kid that's already making $4 million saying, "Why don't you come take a pay cut and make 250?"
But you did along the way though, right?
What's that?
It'd be great if you just went up to McDavid. You know, you'd be a really good linesman.
Oh no! Well, I have done some of the stuff I've done is like when they want to chirp, and I don't usually do it to McDavid because he doesn't really bitch to me. It's usually that second, third line guy at the bench, and they're bitching about something that wasn't even involving them. I usually just hand them the whistle and say, "Here, you go do my job." And I always say, "Listen, you want this job or you don't want the pay cut." So
hey, talking about that, Morty, I wanted to build a little bit on what Ian was saying about talking to other people. I want to ask you down the road, or next question after this one, about how people would get involved or how you'd recommend it. But when you're on the ice and you're watching some of these guys play, and the speed of the game as you grew your career and finished up last season, speed of the game is incredible. McDavid, you get to see him eye to eye out there. Is there anybody, McDavid, McKinnon's, McCarrs, these guys are special players. Is there anybody that really caught your eye that, I mean, those guys with their speed and their skill and all that, but any other players that you really just, I don't want to say the word marveled because you were working the game, but really appreciated how good they were?
You know what? I always call it the silent assassin. O'Reilly, who Kopitar, those guys they're leaders, but they play the whole game. You know, Bergeron. I like those guys that are great silent leaders. They don't tell it. They don't talk to us. They don't yell at us. They just say, "Listen, if I'm yelling at you, I'm not focusing on the game." But they're going out and leading by example. But they're also doing what's embodying them. McDavid's the scariest man I've ever had coming up me at the when I'm backing up, even if I was 20 years old and him coming at me, I wouldn't want to see. He's embarrassed many a defenseman in this business, and it's not even an embarrassment because it's like he got me. Those guys are speed factors, but it's those the three guys I had mentioned earlier, and there's lots of them. Jamie Benn is just a tough, hard-nosed guy. Those guys are solid. Bukestad in Florida, most underrated player that's out there, I think, right now because no one knows of him. I look at those players and I'm going, that's what a team is built around, is those guys, because they're not looking for the fanfare. They're paid for it, for what their abilities are, but they're an all-around player and they're all-around leaders. So that being said, these guys, the new age guys like the Zegras and those guys, that's what they're paid for. They're paid to be creative. They're paid for that. I mean, I look at some of the shit these kids do now. It's like I would have been in the press box buying Boreas Salming more hot dogs because I would never have seen the ice if you even put it into the slot. It was off the high yard, off the glass, right, Charps?
Yeah, you didn't. Ian and I talk about it all the time, and these young guys, and the game's changed, and you know what? The game's never been more popular. So, but yeah, the stuff when I'm watching the other night, I went down and watched Vegas play Edmonton. Some of the stuff, like the little back pass into the slot when you're coming around behind your net, where the guy didn't rim it hard or go off the glass, and a lot of times it works. But I'm just like, I tip my hat to them. I'm like, these guys are fearless, and I guess because they've taken a lot of the. We were confined as players, and Gretzky did what he wanted because, it was Gretzky, and some of those other guys could do that. But the majority of your player, they were a cookie cutter. You do it, you get it off the glass defenseman, you know, you rim the puck hard. You know, you see fourth line, 5-6D out there making those plays now. So, and I guess maybe it's the way the other team's defending you at times too. But yeah, it's amazing to watch. You must have been sitting there some nights, Morty, going, I can't believe what I'm watching here right now, because those pucks do get picked off once in a while and end up in the net, right? And the first thought in my head is, well, that would have been it for the next 5-6 games, or you would have gone to the minors. Yeah.
But that's the risk reward scenario. I mean, and it took me, I had to really retrain myself on the ice when I was officiating, because I was always about system and flow. And, you know, say about year 10, 12, there was a flow to a hockey game where you knew it was going north. These guys go south more than they go north, if you know what I mean. Like, they're regrouping. So now I mean, it pisses me off. You know, I might be hungover, I might be tired, I might go my 4th game in 5 nights. And now I got to stop and backtrack and go forward again. So, but they do that more often than not. So then my gap gets different. I got to look at the ice different. But that's just the new system. It's basically these guys can now gap it up, and then all of a sudden they back off, and then they do the stretch pass, and they get a 2-on-1. These guys are that good. Like, and Sharps, you said it. It's not like in our day we had 2 lines and 4 defensemen that could play all the time. The 5th, 6th defenseman, or the 3rd, 4th line guys, we were the meat and potato guys. We went out and created space. We put the fear, like, you know, I didn't want to see the 4th line come out at me, but that's the guys I played against, because I knew that every time I touched the puck or got even in the zone, they were hitting me. Now the 4th, you know, the 5th, 6th defenseman, these guys can all play the game. They can move the biscuit. They can do this, and that's what's the difference in the game now. Like, they can make the risk play because they're almost encouraged to do it, because it pulls someone in, and it just, they have a different sense of backing up each other and understanding that, where, you know, ours was hard off the glass. That was it.
Yeah.
It's a more exciting hockey game to watch. It was even better to officiate. Just, it got a little more tiring after a while when you're older.
You bring up, you bring up a good thing about how the game's changed, but I'm going to bring up something that kind of goes back to your day and the style you played and what you said. The open ice clean hit. And now they're fighting after that. Even though it's a clean hit, the guys are fighting. How do you stop them from fighting after being hit? It's really a weird kind of phenomenon going on right now. Do they have to give an extra 2 if you get hit and then they start fighting?
Yeah. The kid did nothing wrong. He's playing by the rules.
Yeah.
You know,
and everybody's fighting afterwards. It's crazy.
But and this is part of the culture that's happened in the last 15 years or 10 years, or whatever. There was a point in time back in hockey where they stopped hitting, and these kids got to go out and play. And number one, it was because of growth size and difference between an age of 10 and 15-year-old kids, or 12, whatever, when they started contact. Then the contact, well, they didn't learn. They never learned how to hit. So everything was high and in the face and everything else. Then now all of a sudden they got to be team tough. Well, team tough is about the game. You were never allowed to take the number. Like, if Sharps came at me, or I'd go at 34, or I'd take his number and get him later. He was going to eat it, you know, the Louisville in the back of the calf one point, or it was basically retribution that way. These guys don't know how to take a number. They only live in 30-second increments, because then they go back and look at the iPad and what they didn't do or what they did do next. And then they forgot about that shit.
It's funny.
They don't think about the 60-minute game and going, you know what, Ian, you got me in the first shift there. You speared me in the nuts. Guess what? If it's a 4-1 game, you're eating something. And that's kind of the lost art of it, because they only live in small increments.
They live in a TikTok world.
Yep. Hey, Morty, do you think part of it is too, it's the sponsorship?
What's that? Sorry?
Sorry. I was just saying, do you think nowadays, like the games, you can pretty much get on your stopwatch and you're going to be between 220 and 230, somewhere in there, right? Maybe 225, 235 out the door. Do you think because of the sponsorship and the way the money in the game now, that part of it is too, is the sponsors want this fast moving, you know, like, I mean, you know, they want to be in and out. We got to play 82 of them. The NBA kind of, I mean, they do it in 48 minutes, but the NBA does a little over 2 hours and they're out. Do you think some of it is the sponsorship and the pressure on the league to be like, hey, we need to make sure that we bundle this up and make it as quick and entertaining as we can, and something's got to give, and that's the physicality, because you know and I know back in the day, after every whistle, especially in a 4-1 game, you were getting a scrum, and you know it was slowing everything down. So do you think the money and the sponsorship has kind of pushed it, or do you just think the way the kids are coming up through minor hockey now is changing that? And we're getting a lot of influence from around the world with different players, right?
I think the influence is basically is media, but I mean, you're looking at baseball. They got pitch counts now. They got basically clocks. They got this. I don't want to be at the baseball field for 3.5 hours. The attention span of most people, you can give them everybody goes crazy when there's a movie that's 2.5 hours long, or the song is more than 4.5 minutes. Because they just don't have that attention span to stay engaged for the full 2.5 hours, 2:20. We were happy if we blew a commercial in the game, if we happened to roll over that time, because we hit the window and missed the window at the end. It kind of created, because we knew that we did a good job by missing that window because of the flow of the game. The media, the advertisers didn't like it because they didn't get their 2-minute window to advertise. But I think the NHL has done a great job of keeping the flow together. I think they've allowed our officials to dictate what's going on with scrums. Yeah, we get one, but if it becomes, I think we've just seen the Rangers game there 5 days ago, 6 days ago. Well, I want to see that. I want to see adrenaline. I want to see them kick the shit out of each other. I want to see Washington and them go at it. That's a rival. I mean, I think both teams, or Washington's not in the playoffs, but they're going on retribution based on what I said earlier to Ian about, he got me in the first period with a spear. I'm going to get him back. Well, something happened in 20, not game 82, and that's where you kind of pay your toll. But getting back to it, I think the flow of the game is what's created it all, and we have more continuous action because of the regroup. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So north, they're recycling south, so that creates more time off the clock, which then creates more flow to a game in general. Even though it seems like you're stagnating the growth and flow of the game, back in the day, it used to be just get the red line and dump it in. Now they regroup and they got more opportunity to open that seam. It's like a quarterback looking for check 1, check 2, check 3. And he's got to find space, and all of a sudden he finds that guy, and next thing you know, it's a 40-yard game. That's what I think the NHL has done with the players have done. The players have done that. The NHL has created the opportunity with no hooking, holding, and all that extra stuff to slow the game down, with allow these Macar's kids to just flourish.
I got one more question for you before we wrap it up. I know Jeff's got another one as well. Anything that, say there's somebody, they're playing junior hockey right now, and they know they're not going to get drafted. They don't know if they're going to go to college, but they might want to chase a refereeing linesman show. They might want to do that for a career. Anything you should suggest for them to do, and would you suggest it to somebody?
Yes, my suggestion is any kid, woman, man, anybody playing any level of hockey, higher level, even if they're playing tier 2 junior hockey, if they've played major junior hockey, if they're going to go to play university hockey in Canada and or whatever. University hockey is different in the States because it's more pro level there. You play as long as hard as you can. Get that out of your system. When I left the ice, there was points where I knew that I was done. I had no problem walking away. I just had the opportunity of someone to push me there. But to say all of a sudden, well, I'm just going to give the game up. I still like it, but I just say, if you can do both, or if you can get yourself even introduced while you're still playing at a high level, do it. Because that is only going to enhance your ability to say, listen, I made this career choice, and now my next career choice is about me and my pursuit of adrenaline. Adrenaline is the only thing you can't manufacture in life outside of getting put into situations, correct? And hockey did that every night I went on the ice as a linesman when I started in 1993. And it flourished, and it gave me a career that at the age of 54, I'm now sitting on my cottage and enjoying every aspect of it. Yeah, my body's going to pay the toll, but my mind is still at peace.
It's because I stick you in the nuts.
Well, that's I knowing you now for all of 35 minutes or whatever, 40 minutes, I would expect that of you. You're just basically that
Oh yeah,
pick and roll, right? Pick and roll and run away. Would you hide behind like a Reevesy or something like that?
yeah. I'm a floater. I'm just totally just run in, stick in the nuts, and then
So
help
do you
me.
want to be a referee then if you're a floater?
What's that?
You can be a referee if you're a floater. Actually, no, you can be the goal judge. We don't even have them anymore.
That's funny.
That's funny.
He knows my talents. You might want.
Well, he's a chirper, Morty. You'd have had a good time on the ice chirping back and forth with Lord Bag, because it's what he does for a living, is chirp. But last question for me, I was kind of, Ian asked kind of what I was getting at was just an avenue for young people that might want to get in it, and you've kind of talked about that a little bit. How are you doing today? A lot of people. They leave work, I'm going to retire, I'm going to do this and do that. Do you miss any part of it? I mean, I work in the travel business too, and I hate traveling because I got to travel this afternoon to get to work. So I'm with you on that. But so when I leave, I will not miss the travel part of anything. How are you doing? Like, are you staying involved, doing clinics for young refs, or you just got your feet up right now and doing some stuff that has been put on the shelf for a long time?
I'm doing the shelf part first and foremost. Reacquaint myself with my wife. She's been a hockey widow for 22 years that I've been a part of pro hockey. But I was fortunate enough that one of my former colleagues, was involved in Ontario University Association, and I was so fortunate to be a part of being able to be a supervisor and to go in to that level of hockey, which all those guys are former junior players or other, and the level of hockey is great. There's a respect to it, and the officials get the same feel. They're also tenured officials that are officiating there, but they're also still want to learn. Again, a four-man system in hockey period is something that's still something to be learned, because they're still crossing over between. I'm able to teach the difference between being able to trust your partners that are on the ice now that you have four as opposed to three, and just trying to manage it. And that is something that I think I've found a calling for me, because I can relate to these guys. They seem to respond. I'm not there to tell them what they did wrong, right, wrong, or different. I'm there to try and tell them how to position to be safer. And if they're in positions that I talk about, they're safe, but they're also going to see the ice even better because they don't have scrambling around looking for shit. So that's where I'm kind of hoping to continue. But I'm doing some mild carpentry work. Fiddle, I play. I just like keeping busy. I can't sit still. But I've done a couple clinics early in the summer. My belief was I didn't want to commit to anything that first year, even though your name is fresh and everything. I needed to get a recharge, and maybe something will come up this summer. I think youth hockey is something where I want to be involved, because I think the message can be received differently, as opposed to someone that's already done it and you want to retrain them. The younger kids can kind of respond different to what your message is, and it's rewarding that way.
Hey, Morty, we'll let you go after this, but what would you say before each game, or the thoughts that were through your head, but to these young officials that are going out there? There's a lot of pressure on them. These young kids are going out. We need officials. We need people to be out there refereeing and lining the games, but there's a lot of noise, as you know, coming down on you. What is the one thing you would say before each game to a young kid or a young aspiring ref, to get them ready, get their mind in the right frame of mind to go out and do their job for the next 60 minutes?
A lot of times, and it took me a long time to learn this myself. Rob should kind of help me a little bit when he was talking about trying to get your mindset going into a game. You can't just all of a sudden turn it off and on. I'd always just try to say to the young guy, listen, let's just stay in our lane right now. 3 criteria: let's protect the goaltenders, let's protect the players, any safe plays like along the boards, boarding, charging, high sticking, and let's penalize the scoring opportunities, because that's what the NHL is all about. It's safety, scoring opportunities, and flow of the game. Sometimes you may have to interact when you get games like the New York Ranger Washington game, where you have to supersede yourself and get in there, because sometimes when players don't go at it, that's what you get paid for, identifying the fact that there is a bit of an anomaly in the game. And a lot of times you can reset it with a quick conversation, and if it wants to, just don't threaten to do something and not do it if they do it again.
Right on. Thanks, Morty.
Thanks. I'll call you Dean.
I like Morty. Morty's kind of my gig.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Sometimes Jeff will use when Jeff will have some friends on, he'll use nicknames, and I feel uncomfortable with it. But I'll call you Morty. Morty.
Well, we're friends now. Hey,
Okay, we're friends now.
Hey, Brex. Don't put that in the end of shit or whatever. Or an EY or something.
Yeah. I can't wait to come over to the cottage.
You know what? You're welcome anytime. Have a jug of Crown Royal and some beers here. I don't know what your brand is there too, but nothing with fruit in it.
That's
Right
awesome.
on. Well,
look
let's say
forward
hi
to
to
it.
everybody out here for you, Morty. Thanks again for doing this. This is awesome, and congrats. Boy, going and playing hockey at the highest level and then refereeing for as long as you did. And I was telling Morty the other day before we set this up, now that he's out of the game, I played with Wes. So now, like when Wes is on, it's like, okay, I got to tune in because I try and, when I knew they were doing a game, it was always kind of fun to follow a guy that you had a past with. As we get older, there's fewer and fewer of us that are involved. But thanks again, bud. Really appreciate it.
No worries,
Appreciate
dude. Please say hi to Randy and Sue for me. Give them a big hug. And
Will do.
enjoy. Tell Randy he owes me a big steak dinner sometime.
Will do.
Right on, guys. This is a true pleasure, and enjoy your time.
Awesome. Have a good day, bud. That was awesome. That interview brought to you by Heady Gear, headygear.com. Go there, get yourself a backpack. Put your being on that backpack. Check it out. It's brought to you by Brett Hedican. Use the code BAG15. Get yourself a discount. BAG15. Get yourself a discount on Heady Gear. That was a great interview. I love that.
Yeah, Morty's a great guy, really engaging. Played with him. We were drafted around the same time. We were in camps together, played a little bit together, but really kind of cool. Like he decided to make a 180, but he stayed in the game and he went into refereeing. I don't think a lot of people kind of realize, how in depth all that was, but he paid his dues. And I think one of the things that really helped him, obviously he played at the highest level you can play at, but when he made the transition into refereeing, he was a young guy, still in great shape, able to keep up with the game, able to understand the game, didn't sit on his hands for a couple of years and decide to get into it. So we got to have Morty back on. We'll talk a little bit more about maybe getting, how we can introduce the refereeing to some younger people. And
let's go back for a second. When he said he used to hit like Scott Stevens. You ever see him? Who did you ever see?
Oh yeah, Morty played with an edge. Yeah, absolutely. Right-handed defenseman. And Morty would step up. He's a character. His best friend, he said, was Steve Chason. Steve and I got drafted together. And of course we all kind of, the hockey world's a small world. And Steve or Susan now has moved out to Vegas, and Susan's with Randy, and the kids are all doing well. Everyone's doing well, and they keep in touch with Morty. But it is a small world, and Steve and him were buddies. So I think he tried to model his game a little bit after Steve, and Steve had a hell of a career, was a hell of a defenseman. But Morty, look out, like he would step out of his way if you had your head down. Jacob Trouba type player. Like he said Stevens, but people today see Trouba, that'd be Morty. He'd get you on the tracks and he'd light you up. And
he'd get you off the tracks.
What's that?
He'd get you on the tracks and then he'd get you off the tracks.
He'd knock you off the tracks. But great guy, and someone we're going to try and have on a little bit more from time to time, because I think he has a perspective of the game that is so unique. But like we said earlier, we'd love to see young people pursue this career, because without the refs, we don't have a game. And I know everyone likes to pick on them, but they're really good people, and they don't have an agenda. They're just trying to go out there and do the best they can.
Yeah. Before we get going, we'll do shout outs, and I want to bring up our pool, the Enjoying Orange Slices hockey pool. We haven't talked about it much. I'm still in 18th place. I don't know where you are.
Well, I was on 4th or 5th, and then I fell off the earth. So maybe someone can explain that. I think I'm in 19th or 20th. last time I looked. I just delete the email now when I get it. I'm like, how did I go from 4th or 5th? I'm obviously missed something. I missed a memo. But anyways,
we don't have many games. We don't have many games left, and we'll have to see who's the winner. And we'll receive a bag of oranges from Jeff and I. But we're also probably doing one for the playoffs, so keep an eye out for that. We'll put a message out on the message board, and keep an eye for that. Do you have any shout outs this week, Jeff?
I'll let you start on the shout outs this week.
I would like to give a shout out as we're talking about travel this week. I had a tough time getting to St. Louis. I'd like to give a shout out to them because I was nice to the people at the desk in Chicago. They put me on a couple of different flights, and then the tornadoes decided not to let us get on those. So big shout out to the people that work in the travel industry at the front line and the help desks in the airport, where they only see people that have had canceled flights. Yeah. That is a tough job. You are just taking shit every third person. So so big shout out to I think her name was Shelley at the old help desk in Chicago. Big shout out.
Maybe next time through you can give her a sticker or something, Orange Slices sticker, and thank her so she'll remember you. But my shout out this week is to Ross Molson and all the people involved with Absinthe 12th anniversary last night. When we went down to the show, and I got great seats, and of course I got picked on by the gazillionaire for part of it, which is always enjoyable.
Wait, did you get the dance?
No, I didn't get the dance because I knew when the dance was coming. So I was like, I'm getting out of my seat here for a few minutes. I got to go to the bathroom because he got me earlier in the show and he was chirping me. And so I've been chirped. I was up on stage years ago at Zumanity. I've been pulled up on other shows. And yesterday we're sitting a couple rows back. And when we got in there, it's like, this is not good. But the show is so good. That any chirping that I received was forgotten. But 12th anniversary party, Ross is the founder of Absinthe and Spiegel World, and we talk about them all the time. So we're not giving a shameless plug, but we got invited down to the party. If you come to Vegas, we always talk about Atomic. Absinthe has changed since the last time I saw it, and it is unbelievable. And there's a hand-to-hand act at the end, which Ian, you beat me one day. You and I should try and do the hand-to-hand act. I think it's the best act I've ever seen in any show in Absinthe. The two guys that do that are just insane how talented they are along with everybody else. So long-winded shout out, but to Spiegel World, congratulations on your 12th anniversary with Absinthe. I was at the first show and I was at the 12th anniversary show, so I kind of feel pretty lucky for that.
You know what? I forgot to mention WrestleMania. We'll talk about that next week.
Yep. Okay.
All right.
Love to all.
Loved all.